our 5 o'clock newscast, we told you about a Brooklyn police officer who's accused of hitting a man's car, leaving the scene, and later assaulting him.
Seems hard to believe, but now 19 investigator Mike Mason is showing us how investigators are handling a case involving one of their own.
So oftentimes on this channel, the stories that we tend to cover involving the police are stories where the media or the suspect in a particular instance is lying about the police, falsely accusing them with false allegations, as the super mayor would say.
Off of hearsay. False allegations and not facts.
Of evil white racism, of bad behavior, when in reality, when we get the full evidence, what ultimately ends up proving to be true is that the person, the suspect, usually a black person if it's getting mainstream media attention, was the initiator of force, presented himself as a serious threat, often a deadly threat if it involves a police shooting, and of course the officer was 100% justified, even though the facts never get in the way of the propaganda. However, in this particular case, out of Brooklyn, Ohio, it appears the situation is completely reversed. Our hero of the day is in fact the man that was in the car, the civilian, who was driving on the highway when he got sideswiped by a pickup truck. He decided to follow that pickup truck. He got to the point where he followed him to his place of business where he actually worked. And guess what? It was not a regular ordinary place of business. It was a Brooklyn, Ohio police precinct, and the man who hit his car and then fled the scene of the accident, putting multiple people in danger, appears to be a Brooklyn, Ohio police officer, who, by the way, is accused and is caught on video assaulting the man who had this complaint, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
On April 30th, Juan Wyckoff says he had just left work and was driving along I-90 when the Chevy Silverado struck his Kia and took off. He then grabbed his cell phone to record himself chasing the truck while both vehicles drove erratically, exceeding speeds of 100 miles an hour.
He's on the wrong side of the road, on the other side of the yellow, running through a red light, getting off the highway, get back on the highway.
The truck's driver turned out to be Brooklyn Police Sergeant Paul Stein, who was on his way to work. Wyckoff says at the time he didn't know he was following a cop to the station's employee entrance.
He wasn't in uniform yet. He didn't give me a command to say, like, get out of his parking lot.
So look, as you guys can see from this cell phone video, the driving in this particular case is absolutely insane. And one of the things that I will say about the individual who is alleging this misconduct by the police is that I'm watching cell phone video of you cut through lanes in an erratic way, you run through red lights, and of course you're pursuing this pickup truck, this person who did the hit and run against you, and he's driving even more erratically by my estimation than you are. But the fact is, both of you are putting people in danger at this moment in time. So this is something to think about as you're pursuing somebody who may have done a wrong to you, who may have done a hit and run to you, that you could end up injuring other people. I mean, again, part of this footage is this man just blowing through a red light in pursuit of this person who turned out to be a Brooklyn, Ohio officer. But that being said, what we can clearly see by this video is the pickup truck, regardless of who we thought was in it at that moment in time, appears to be fleeing this other individual, getting off the highway, getting back on the highway, running through red lights, erratic lane changes, all kinds of piss poor behavior on the road, exceeding speeds of 100 miles an hour. It's just wildly inappropriate for an officer to do, and something that I would definitely consider investigating seriously and possibly pursuing criminal charges, because again, there appears to be no other reason for this officer to be driving this way other than the fact that he's trying to get away from somebody that he just hit with his vehicle, because he's doing a hit and run. He is committing a crime at this moment in time, and you need to hold officers accountable because obviously they should know better.
Surveillance video shows Stein trying to push Wyckoff out the door by shoving and kicking him.
In my face, like pushing me hard, very aggressive, trying to really get me back.
Wyckoff filed an assault complaint against the officer He then met with Westlake police to file an accident report as their body cameras were rolling.
So they have surveillance video of the shoving and of what is described as the kicking, and you can see it quite clearly right there. And I will also point out that Wyckoff, the guy who is pursuing him, is still holding his phone up. So he is not in any way, shape, or form in a fighting stance. And by the way, one of the reasons why you know for sure that he's not ready to fight is because he's challenging a police officer with this phone, recording him, confronting him on this hit and run. But obviously the officer didn't think he committed a crime because he's not arresting him for his behavior right here. Obviously something unusual is going on. This officer is just trying to get him out of the police precinct, and that to me is incredibly suspicious.
Cut me off. As he's doing that, he hit the back of his truck, hit the car. He just...
Oh, so he cut you off? Or?
Yeah. Everything, he took off. So I'm chasing him on the shoulder. He's cutting through traffic.
Wyckoff explained how he says Sergeant Stein assaulted him.
My boy kicking me. He mugged me down there, punching in my face.
So as you can see right here, after Wyckoff ended up pursuing the hit and run driver in this particular case, he ended up getting shoved by an officer who again was the person, or appears to be the person, guilty of this alleged crime. He then went back to the jurisdiction where the accident actually took place, reported it to the police in that jurisdiction. And I just want to say, of all the things that impressed me about this individual, the number one thing is the way that he made that pickup truck sound. It was damn near the best I've ever heard. Seriously, Wyckoff, respect where respect is due, credit where credit is due.
Just to find out that this dude is a cop is crazy, man.
We're going to talk to the other dude too, see what's going on, and then we'll be submitting like charges to the prosecutor.
Look, I 100% agree with him. To find out that this other person behind the wheel of the pickup truck, driving this erratically, running red lights, cutting through the shoulder lane, driving over 100 miles per hour, is a police officer, he's the person that is doing this in his civilian vehicle, is insane. It is absolutely crazy. It is madness, and it's absolutely absurd. But this is the situation that we're in. And again, we have a lot of supporting evidence for this individual's claims, so they should be taken seriously. Everything that this guy did shows him to be a law-abiding person. Notice how different this is from the cases that the mainstream media will highlight and blow up, where the suspect in that particular case, and by the way, this guy's not even a suspect. He's not accused of doing anything wrong in this particular case. But in the cases that the media highlights, when the person is actually a suspect, what we find out with the subsequent evidence is the suspect did everything wrong in that case. They acted erratically. They ended up attacking the cop. They, fill in the blank, did whatever type of crime that ended up earning them the treatment that they received from the officer that they are now complaining is somehow oppressive. Well, guess what? In this case, 100% the opposite is true. The officer's acting crazy, and the thing is, we actually have audio from when the detectives called that sergeant from the Brooklyn, Ohio Police Department, and his explanation is horrid. It's terrible.
A Westlake detective later calls Sergeant Stein to get his side of the story.
Apparently you were involved in an accident on your way to work this morning.
He claims I hit him. I never felt an impact.
Were you aware this guy was chasing you the whole time?
Oh yeah, I was trying to get away from him.
Okay.
Because he was driving like a bat out of hell. He claims that I assaulted him, and he tried coming after me, and I shoved him right back out the door.
One of the rules of this channel is that if something doesn't make sense, it's usually a lie. And a perfect example of something not making sense and sounding like a lie is the statement that Officer or Sergeant Stein gave to that detective over the phone. And you can kind of hear from the detective's tone of voice that in reality, he probably doesn't believe him, because he says that this guy said you hit him, and he's like, oh, I don't think I did, detective. I'm pretty sure I did not hit his vehicle. And then he responds to him by asking, hey, were you aware that this guy was chasing you like this whole time? And he says, oh yeah, I was definitely aware of that, but I was trying to get away from him, the guy who was chasing me, for the accident that I don't think happened, because he was driving like a bat out of hell. Again, this is very unusual for a police officer, because even though he wasn't in uniform, typically the police are armed. In addition to that, he didn't appear to call ahead to his department to let him know that there was somebody erratic that was following him so that they could assist him when he pulled into the parking lot. His strategy, and by the way, this is largely caught on cell phone video by the guy who's alleging that he hit his car, was to pull into the police department after eluding him. He did not elude this man, and then run inside really quickly so that way nobody could say anything, or he wouldn't be able to figure out who hit him, or some other absurd maneuver that he was trying to use to get out of the situation that is completely unbecoming of a police officer. Again, I'm not saying if you're a regular ordinary person and you're being chased down by somebody driving crazy that you should pull over for that person, but he's a police officer. He is assuming that this guy is chasing him for some reason. He says that there was no accident, so that already doesn't make any sense. And then he's driving like an absolute madman in a pickup truck in order to avoid this person when he is in law enforcement. To me, this shows clearly and obviously, and again, it's all alleged right now, but it does show, in my opinion, clearly and obviously that he did hit his vehicle. He was fully aware of the fact that he hit his vehicle, but he didn't want to take accountability for hitting his vehicle. So instead, he tried to flee, putting people in danger. He ended up getting pursued. And then when this man showed up to the precinct, he admits to assaulting him. He admits to shoving him. And he says, this guy came after me. But as we saw in the surveillance video, he is holding his cell phone, recording this situation, not coming at the officer in a physically threatening way. Again, all of the evidence right now supports the man in the Kia. It supports Wyckoff. It does not support Sergeant Stein.
After filing reports with both agencies, Wyckoff says neither one updated him on their investigations. So he turned to 19 Investigates for help.
Has any detective reached out to you?
Nobody has reached out to me. I didn't really know what to do.
We confirmed the officer's identity and obtained reports from both agencies. In Brooklyn's report, it states Wyckoff followed Stein to the police department complaining about a collision he had on I-90. Although Wyckoff provided a written statement detailing the incident, Brooklyn's report doesn't mention the alleged assault since it's still under investigation. But when Wyckoff filed the crash report with Westlake Police, officers there documented it.
He pushes me on my face.
Look, this is very sketchy behavior. All of this is alleged, including the accident, including the hit and run and whatnot. And for them to say the assault is not included in the report because at this moment in time it's under investigation doesn't make any sense. The accident is under investigation. Now, I will say Wyckoff may have made one critical error, or at least I hope he didn't make this error, which is not getting a picture of the part of the pickup truck that ended up hitting his vehicle, because what you can at least tell from the photograph is whether or not he has impact damage at the appropriate place that corresponds to the damage on his Kia. And also you could end up in a situation where there's paint transfer. Now, of course, he has his own vehicle, so he can use that to identify the paint from this particular pickup truck, but it's good to have the photo to represent both pieces of damage on both vehicles in order to better prove your case. And I hope Wyckoff has this, because if he doesn't, it would just be an unforced error, but the local news definitely should have shown it if he had it. But again, obviously the officer's statement just doesn't make any sense. He's running away from this guy who's chasing him, and he knows that he's chasing him for no reason, for no particular accident. And again, you could tell by the lack of confidence in what he told the detective, because if you hit somebody with your car, you could say, I hit them. If you didn't hit somebody with the car, you could say, I didn't hit them. Instead, he's like, I don't think I did. I don't think I felt the impact, which is not the confidence-inspiring statement that you should be putting forward in a case like this.
Brooklyn's law director tells 19 Investigates the city is still investigating the incident, and once it's completed, a special prosecutor will decide whether to file any charges.
Now look, a special prosecutor in this particular instance appears to make sense in my opinion. Obviously, police departments work closely with the district attorney's office, so in this situation, having a third party that's not connected, that's not entrenched, is a sensible way to go about this, and I will be following up on this investigation. However, Wyckoff has one final point, and obviously it's true.
Meanwhile, Wyckoff feels if the tables were turned, he'd already be arrested and charged with several counts.
Hit, skip, leaving the scene of an accident, assault.
We wanted to interview Brooklyn's chief of police, its law director, and Sergeant Stein himself. However, They all declined our request.
Look, what he said right there is just accurate. If you do a hit and run on a civilian, you are going to get arrested for that hit and run on a civilian. If you do a hit and run on an off-duty officer and he has to chase you down to your place of employment, you are definitely getting arrested at this moment in time. However, for the police officer, for the sergeant, it's completely different standards, completely different rules, but we don't play that nonsense right here. We analyze the facts, we look at the information that we have at the moment in time when it is revealed, and we make our judgments. And as of right now, and by the way, it would take extraordinary contradictory evidence in order to disprove this, it appears that Wyckoff is in the right and Sergeant Stein is dead wrong, and honestly needs to be held criminally accountable for his behavior, not just the sideswipe hit and run, but also the erratic driving he did post that in order to get away from him, and of course the assault that he initiated against this person. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias. You could support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a crazy cop acting badly based on the information that we have right now. Till next time.